question number 9. 30 seconds to introduce.
Question on behalf of Deputy Culhane, who's in Westminster today. And I suppose once again we see a day of uncertainty and political chaos in Westminster. Hoping it's nothing to do with Deputy Culhane. Taoiseach, consider recent developments and the comments of the Taoiseach and the European Commission regarding a hard border in Ireland. This question was tabled to ascertain what mechanisms are being put in place to avoid a hard border in the event of a no-deal Brexit.
2 minutes.
Yeah, Deputy, the Government has consistently said that we will not accept a hard border between the two jurisdictions on this island. The EU and UK both accept that avoiding a hard border is essential. I also know that this is the position of the great majority of members in this House. Throughout the negotiations, it's been a priority to protect the Good Friday Agreement in all its parts and to ensure that there will be no hard border on the island of Ireland under any circumstances. Only the withdrawal agreement, with its backstop provisions, provides the essential legal guarantee that we looked for. However, if the withdrawal agreement does not enter into force, Ireland will have legal responsibilities and an economic interest in terms of ensuring the protection of the single market and customs union. The UK will have its own responsibilities, including with regard to the WTO. As co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement, Ireland and the UK have solemn and binding obligations to ensure peace and stability in Northern Ireland. As such, if the UK leaves without an agreement in place, the European Union and Ireland on the one side and the UK on the other will all have to work intensively together to ensure that we deliver on our shared goal of avoiding a return to a hard border. And we are absolutely committed to doing that, even in those very difficult circumstances. The President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker, is fully committed to this objective too, and he provided further reassurances on this in a phone call to the Taoiseach on the 24th of January. This position is fully shared by the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk also, and our fellow EU 27 member states. As the Commission spokesperson also stated on the 23rd of January, the EU is determined to do all it can, deal or no deal, to avoid the need for a border and to protect peace in Northern Ireland. The EU is fully behind Ireland and has expressed on numerous occasions full solidarity with Ireland, and that has not changed. But can I say, we have a way of doing this. It's called the backstop. It was designed around British red lines. It was designed with Britain, not an offer given to Britain. The debates that we are hearing often in the UK now would seem to suggest that the UK had nothing to do with this, and it was somehow offered to them. This was a solution that Britain bought into through its government.
Deputy Crowe, endorsed. Question.
Last week the Taoiseach was talking with journalists about the possibility of troops being sent to the border, and then he went on to clarify this statement, saying that he was talking about British troops. Again, that's little comfort. We're going back instead of forward. I think part of the challenge that we have as an opposition is that it doesn't help ourselves, and our own understanding is that the government today has refused to clarify what measures it will put in place to ensure there's no hardening of the border in the event of a no deal. You're saying again that you won't accept a hard border, but let me say, is there any measures that the government pursues that would avoid a hard border scenario? And I'm sure we'll have full support of the House. But the difficulty we have is that we want to support positive measures, but we don't know actually what positive measures you're putting forward. And I realise we're in negotiations and all the rest, but that's part of the difficulties that we have. So we won't accept a hard border, and you're saying the EU won't accept a hard border, but part of the difficulties that we're facing is that, if there is no agreement, it will mean that there will be a hard border. So we know that the EU will want to protect its border. So it's about compliance standards and country of origins and so on. So what are we actually proposing, and what are we putting on the table in the event of a no deal hard border?
So Ireland is very clear on how we see mechanisms working to prevent hard border infrastructure. And it revolves around regulatory alignment in the areas that are specific and are required to prevent the need for border infrastructure. That's how the backstop works. It It's essentially the fallback position that the British government committed to repeatedly, that if they can't find other solutions through a future relationship discussion or through bespoke solutions offered to Ireland that can't get agreement, that actually the fallback position would be regulatory alignment in the areas necessary to prevent border infrastructure and to protect an all-island economy, which is very much part of protecting a peace process and the Good Friday Agreement as well. Even though borders aren't specifically mentioned in the Good Friday Agreement, certainly the absence of physical border infrastructure has been such a strong reinforcement to the creation of normality and commerce and peace that I think that's self-evident.
Okay.
So our view on this is deal or no deal. There's an obligation on British and Irish governments to work together and the EU to support that process too.
Deputy Crowe's final question.
To find a way of avoiding border infrastructure through
Deputy
regulatory
Crowe's
alignment.
final question.
My question is in relation to the no-deal scenario where the backstop will not apply. So the Irish government either defies the EU or defies the Good Friday Agreement. There's already structures there, that talks in terms of, relationships with Britain, and the difficulty has been that in many cases the British government, and particularly the British Prime Minister, hasn't tied in for those structures. But last night on RTE there was a poll there by Claire Bourne showed that 80% of people in the South would vote for United Ireland in the event of a no-deal Brexit. And again, we would see that, clearly that's a solution that would mean no borders still within the EU, and the positivity of that. So the government needs to, I think, speed up preparations for a border poll, which if successful would eliminate that British border. Now, I know you're on record as saying that's not the way forward, but it is potentially a legitimate way. It's within the Good Friday Agreement that there's potential there for moving forward for this poll. So would you not accept that in the event of no agreement, hard border, that this is a potential way of moving things forward?
Thank you. Taoiseach, 1 minute, please.
Well, my previous answer was referring to a no-deal scenario when the formal backstop and the withdrawal agreement and the Irish protocol linked to that essentially wasn't ratified. Even in that scenario, there is an obligation on the British government to work with Ireland and the EU, because we cannot do this bilaterally. It has to involve the EU, because this involves protecting the EU's customs union and single market as well. And we cannot have a backdoor, essentially, with no checks at all. So we have to ensure that we find a legally sound and sensible mechanism that prevents the need for physical border infrastructure, deal or no deal. And the only way that we have seen that's credible to do that is regulatory alignment on the island of Ireland, north and south. And I believe there would be a big obligation on the British government to follow through on the commitments not only that they have signed up to in the withdrawal agreement and are now not following through on, but the commitments that they made in December 2017 in the political declaration that they made at that time to people on this island. But I have to say that the Irish government is concerned about everybody in Northern Ireland, nationalist and unionist, who are stressed and concerned about what the future holds. And we have to find a way forward that can, in my view, protect the status quo as best we can. And having a constitutional debate on the future of Ireland, even though nationalist and unionist concerns are perfectly legitimate, but having that constitutional debate right now, I think, makes the overall debate much more complicated.
We have spent